Right then, let's get straight into it. Today, we're going to break down the cognitive interview. Now, this is a really critical topic for your AQA psychology exam, and this whole explainer is designed to give you that solid foundation of knowledge. That way, you can walk into our next lesson ready to really nail the exam technique and start hitting those top marks.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the memory problem itself, why a new interview technique was even needed. Then we'll dive into the solution, the cognitive interview. After that, we'll see how it's been upgraded and changed over time, weigh up its strengths and weaknesses, and then, the really important bit, we'll bring it all together to show you exactly how to structure a brilliant exam answer. So, let's kick things off with the problem. Before the cognitive interview was even a thing, a lot of psychologists were getting pretty worried about a really fundamental issue, and that was how police were actually gathering evidence from the people who saw the crime.
And this, right here, this was the central question they were wrestling with. We know memory can be fragile, right? So was the standard way of interviewing people actually helping them remember accurately? Or could it, maybe, be making things worse?
And here's the thing. The old school standard police interview, the SPI, well, it wasn't really based on what we know about how memory works. Think about it. It was often just this rapid-fire series of closed questions. What color was his hat? How tall was she? With the officer jumping in and interrupting all the time. An approach like that can totally disrupt someone's natural train of thought and really mess with their ability to retrieve memories, which could lead to some seriously dodgy testimony.
So how do you fix a problem like that?
Well, this is where two psychologists, Fisher and Geiselman, step in. They came up with a brand new method, one that's actually based on psychological theory. And this is the absolute core knowledge you're going to need for your AO1 description marks.
And here it is, the cognitive interview, or CI. The massive difference here is that it's a set of techniques designed to work with how our brains store and retrieve memories, not against them. It's all about giving the witness the tools to unlock memories that might be buried a little deeper.
So the theory behind it all is absolutely key. It's built on Telving's idea that any given memory isn't just a single thing. Instead, it has multiple retrieval paths. Think of it like this. A memory is a destination, and there are loads of different roads that can get you there. If one road's blocked by a traffic jam, the CII is basically a toolkit for finding a different route.
And these are the four main roads, the four core techniques you need to know. First, report everything. This encourages the witness to say every tiny detail, even if it seems totally irrelevant. Second, reinstate context. This is where you ask them to mentally travel back to the scene, thinking about the sounds, the smells, how they were feeling. Third, reverse order, getting them to recall the whole event backwards in time. And fourth, change perspective, trying to recall the event from someone else's point of view. You absolutely 100% need to know these four for your exam.
But psychology never really stands still, does it? The original CI was a fantastic start, but it didn't take long for it to be tweaked and improved to make it even more powerful. And this led to the Enhanced Cognitive Interview, or ECI. Fisher and Geiselman figured out that the social side of the interview, the actual conversation, was also incredibly important. So the ECI adds things like building a good rapport with the witness, reducing their anxiety, and asking more open-ended questions to let them tell the story in their own words.
Now this table is brilliant because it lays out the evolution so clearly. You've got the original CI, with its four memory techniques. Then comes the ECI, which bolts on that extra layer of communication skills. And then you have the modified CIs, the MCIs, which are basically stripped-down versions for specific situations, like interviewing children, where a technique like change perspective might just be too complicated for them to handle.
Okay, so we've covered the what, we know what the CI is. Now for the bit that gets you the top marks. Evaluation. This is your AO3, where you take a step back and critically look at the evidence for and against this whole technique.
And a fantastic piece of evidence to start with is this big meta-analysis by Kohnken and his colleagues. It's so powerful because they looked at 55 different studies. And what did they find? Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. The CI is great at getting more correct information out of witnesses, but it also tends to increase the amount of incorrect information they recall too. It's a classic trade-off.
So this lays out the exact kind of balanced argument you need to be building in an essay. For your strengths, you've got solid research showing it gets you more correct details and that some parts, like report everything, are really effective. But then, for your weaknesses, you have to talk about that increase in wrong information and also the very real on-the-ground problems. It takes a long time to do properly, and it needs specialist training that, let's be honest, a lot of police forces just don't have the time or money for. Okay, let's get to the most important part.
How do we take all of this knowledge we've just covered and turn it into a fantastic, top-grade exam answer? This is precisely what we're going to be focusing on in our next lesson.
Look, for AQA Psychology, it pretty much always comes down to these two skills. AO1 is about showing the examiner you know your stuff. You can describe the theories and the studies. AO3 is about showing you can think like a psychologist. You can evaluate that knowledge, picking out the strengths and weaknesses.
You are almost guaranteed to see a question that looks something like this. It's your classic 16 marker, and the command words are your best friend here. They're basically your roadmap. Describe is screaming AO1, and evaluate is telling you to bring in all that juicy AO3.
So here is your game plan. For the AO1 description marks, you're going to define the CIE, explain those 4 key techniques, and maybe give a quick mention to the ECI. Then, you switch gears for your AO3 evaluation marks. You build your argument using the studies we've talked about, making sure to present both the good stuff and the not-so-good stuff, and then you wrap it all up with a solid conclusion that weighs everything up. It's simple, it's effective, and it's targeted right at the marks.
Now, to really put this into practice and get a massive head start for our exam skills lesson, I want you to grab your textbook, find the page on the cognitive interview, and look for the check it box. Using everything you've just learned, have a go at answering those questions, especially that big 16 marker. Honestly, doing this beforehand will make a huge difference when we get into class.
And I'll leave you with a final thought to mull over and bring to our lesson. We know the CI takes a lot of time. So based on the evidence we saw from Millen and Bull, if a police officer is in a rush and only has time to use one of the 4 main techniques, which one should they pick? And more importantly, why? Have a think about it, and I will see you in class.